On the count of five, four, three, two, one. Hello and welcome to productlessons.com, a podcast channel where we talk to product leaders from all over the world and learn from them how to build and manage world class software products. Now, today is an interesting episode as I have with me Marisa Sayers, VP Product at Building Link. And those of you who have followed my podcast, you would know that Marisa was one of our former guests. And the interview was very popular, quite an insightful interview some time ago. I enjoyed conversing with her and understanding and learning about her career trajectory. But today we are meeting for another reason, and the reason is uh, I was looking for some help in setting up North Star metrics. And all my research pointed me towards Amplitude's playbook about North Star metric. And at the same time, it was very timely that Marisa was also having these conversations on LinkedIn about the challenges she was facing with her team to set up North Star metric. And then Marisa and I just exchanged some LinkedIn messages and said, "Hey, do you want to talk about it and share each of our challenges and share it to the world? So maybe it could not just help her and me, but also to the larger audience, especially in the context of B2B, because I was struggling in B2B. And so let's welcome Marisa first of all. Hi, Marisa. Welcome again to my podcast channel. How are you doing today?
Great to be here. Thank you.
So, Marisa, as I said, the context here, you have been sharing a lot about North Star metric, and we both, almost everybody who Googles about North Star metric inevitably lands into this fantastic playbook that Amplitude has come up with. And so I also did the same and loved the playbook. Um, However, the challenge that I faced was the examples shared in that ebook was mostly B2C. Say the example was for Instacart that eventually serves to an individual at the end. The example is of Burger King. The example is of Netflix, because usually these services and products are offered to the individual, to the consumer. Uh, so even though I love the framework, I struggle to apply North Star to B2B context in my case, in my product. But before I talk about my challenges, let's try to understand the challenges at your end first. And you might share your experiences on if you have been successful at finding the North Star for your product at all. And then we will come to my challenges. And yeah, so you have been sharing a lot of content, as I said, and conversations. So what's going on from your end?
Yes. So I think on the one hand, there's the playbook and how you use the playbook and what that workshop looks like and who's involved and who leads it. And then on the other side is this hard work of figuring out the North Star. Right. And so within our organization, we actually do kind of a bi-weekly professional development day for the product team, which has been mostly a book club for the past 5 months or so. And so for a recent session, we all read the playbook. Mm-hmm. And so when we came together to do the book club, essentially it was a mini workshop in and of itself. And so we started off, we talked about the metric, the rules behind, kind of the checklist for the North Star metric. We talked about the inputs, made sure everybody was bought into this idea that when we release something to production, there are metrics that we can track immediately, and those metrics are not revenue and they are not churn. And so understanding that the purpose of this initiative is to link those leading indicators that we can hit immediately to those lagging indicators of the business goals. Right. From there, we talked a bit about, what is a bad North Star metric? And so people said things that were overly complicated, things that are vanity metrics. And it kind of made everybody comfortable with this idea of what it shouldn't be. And then go ahead.
To interject, I just wanted to know what was your need to find or look out for a North Star metric? Did you see a pain point that you wanted a North Star metric, or reading the book felt like that you should have one?
Right. So it was actually this need to link our work to the business outcomes. So when I came into the organization recently, this concept of strategic intents had been introduced. We want to decrease churn by this amount. We want to increase top line sales to this amount. And the product managers were struggling with, how do I know that anything I do is going to lead to a sale?
Right.
And so that was when I initially came upon the North Star metric concept. Started to do a lot of reading several months ago, had it in the back of my mind, let's do a workshop. Right. To speak more about our specific context. So you mentioned B2B, right. And to spoil the story, by the end of that initial mini workshop, people were like, Open Table, Spotify, that's easy, everybody knows, but what do we do for our business? Right. And our business is a property management software for rental properties across the world. And within rental properties, you have within residential properties, you have rentals, you have condos, you have co-ops. There are other property types in other places around the world, like the strata in Australia and other places. Right. But you also have, high-rise buildings, mid-rise buildings, single-family home communities. So there are all of these different players. We're B2B2C. We're working directly with properties, but there are also residents using our software. And so it's how do we bring all of that together and actually have a metric that unifies all of the different teams doing different work across the platform. Right. So that was really the impetus. And of course, the North Star and Reforge did some good work on this as well in terms of a constellation of metrics. But this idea that you have these inputs, right. You have the work you're doing, you have the inputs, and then you have the North Star, which right. links you to the business outcomes. So it just gives you a really nice visual for how you get from product work right. to business outcomes.
Got it. So maybe you could help us with the challenges. So you did the workshop all by yourself, and then you struggled to arrive at one North Star metric, and then you got help from others, isn't it? So how did that turn out to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And really the idea was to get everybody in product really bought in and wrapped around the concepts and how we were executing. And the ultimate goal is to do a cross-functional workshop. Right. But after that initial session where we kind of landed with, people were starting to understand the concept, what's not a good North Star metric, but not really being able to really think through what a possible North Star metric could be for our very complex business. Right. So after that initial session, I went to Executive Women in Product on Facebook. I went to LinkedIn. I also went to Chief, which is a network for executive women in New York, not specific to product, right. And just kind of expressed the challenges that we were facing and got a lot of responses from different folks who are in B2B who have either done this before or are currently struggling with the same things. So we got John Cutler, who is one of the authors of the North Star Playbook, to come speak with the team. Right. We did that in a 1-hour kind of AMA session. Right. And a lot of the learnings that I posted on LinkedIn, I think yesterday, really came from John in terms of just not getting bogged down and trying to make it perfect, which I think product managers are struggling with all the time, and really just getting to the story first.
Right. So let's go through. So you shared those lessons learned, and those were 3 lessons. Let's dig a little deeper. You said that you have to start somewhere. Don't get caught up thinking that you are stuck forever with whatever you come up with now. So this was John's advice, isn't it?
Yes.
So what do you mean by don't get caught up? Because I thought North Star metric is supposed to be cemented at least for midterm to long term, because that is not supposed to change. That is the core value that you're adding to your customers. That is the measure of the core value and the business outcome together, isn't it? So help me understand this confusion.
Yeah. So, I mean, none of us have our crystal balls. We can't see the future. We want to get to something that is is reasonably good. But if we're so caught up in it can't change, then we'll never get to something that we think is good enough. And it probably will be good enough. And even if ultimately you want your North Star to last 18 months plus, if your first one has to get revisited in 6 months, like it's not the end of the world. As product managers, we are constantly releasing, iterating, optimizing. So it's really just about the mindset that you're not locked in. The consequences are not grave if it's imperfect.
Got it. So what you're saying is, if you are at all attempting to identify or find your North Star for the first time, you have to experiment or try out with something to begin with, for a shorter duration, and then see if it is actually behaving the way it should, isn't it? So
it's less about like planning for the short term and more about being okay with it not having the longevity that you ultimately want to get to. So the goal is still that it will last longer, but just knowing that it's okay if it doesn't.
If it doesn't, got it. Excellent. The second one was start with a story, the story of the value you drive for your customers and users, and don't get caught up being worried about how you will measure the metric. Could you help us understand this? It looks promising, but yeah.
So this is like, and for some reason it's Amplitude's weekly learning users that's coming to mind in terms of what their North Star metric is. And so weekly learning users is just this concept that the more people are gaining insights from the platform, the more valuable the platform is.
I see.
So that's getting you to like this concept of the North Star and how you talk about it and how that learning and that adoption ultimately leads to stickiness that leads to retention. That's the overall how we get from A to Z. And we can see directly in the platform, you know, how people are sharing learnings and that sort of thing. But the important piece is the specifics of, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but say it's 2 learning users per week, that measurement of exactly what are those numbers, like that can come after. But really, it's remembering that the North Star metric is, or this framework is tying your product strategy. It's bringing your product team through your product strategy to your business outcomes. And you need to be able to tell that story to get people bought into that, to understand that that really is a valuable metric without knowing exactly the measure of it immediately.
Got it. Yeah. So how does a conversation around story should happen? Like you said, cross-functional team. Who are the participants? Who should be, first of all, an ideal participant for such a workshop, and who were participating at your end?
Yeah. So great question. And in terms of the one plug is when I was going through this, I actually Googled just Miro boards for North Star framework. And there is one very extensive board that you will find that basically inputs a lot of the different activities you can do during a North Star workshop to get people engaged and talking.
You know what? I also used Miro board, but I never knew there could be a template for North Star.
Yep. So check it out. And so what I was mentioning is that we started off within the product team to just, because we're also just in this process of transformation, getting our product managers to think more about data and tying their work back to business outcomes. So we did the workshop first amongst our team. But when we do the cross-functional workshop to make sure the broader org is bought in, it's going to be stakeholders, and anyone from finance and data who are understanding product data and business data, to engineers who are going to be managing implementation, to customer success and sales who are on the front lines, and then any other executive stakeholders. So, per the playbook and per all of the, literature on meetings, it's better to have 8 people or fewer. I think in reality, we will have a few more than that. And I'm more concerned kind of with the representation than, optimizing directly for that number.
Got it. And this was all happening remotely through Miro board. Got it. Mm-hmm. So talking about starting with the story. So how did the people? How did you start for the story? Like, did you ask them to to imagine what we are doing as a product, or what value are we adding to to our end customers?
Yeah, and I think in our session we didn't talk as much about it, but when I was reading the playbook, I was really thinking about those key value exchanges.
Mhm.
And something that you'll also think about when doing your workshop is just realizing that everybody has their own beliefs and kind of their own preconceived notions, and being open to the fact that not everybody thinks about the value that your platform offers in the same way.
Right,
So really creating that safe space.
right,
Um, when we talked about the story, I think when we started talking about what's a bad North Star metric, and we segued into doing some silent brainstorming and coming back and talking about what a good uh, North Star metric would be. And I think this was at the point everybody was just very caught up in the B2C versus B2B. Um, but following the discussion with John Cutler, and then we also spoke with Joe Romero, who is on the product analytics team across a number of Adobe products within their Experience Cloud, I believe it's called.
Mhm.
And he talked to us about what they're doing, which is not amplitude specific, but very, similar in kind of the same vein.
Okay.
And then we all came back together as a group again. And so when we did that, we did first, the team again had some silent time if they hadn't ahead of time kind of laid out their own input metrics in North Star.
Right,
And then we did pairs, and then
right,
we came back as a group. And so when we were doing that, it was all about talking through that value exchange. So for our product,
right,
one thing, you what's advised is that you have a single North Star metric. So it's really thinking about how do you break out the input metrics, which
right,
can be specific to a particular product area, module, et cetera, from the
right,
North Star that kind of speaks across everything.
right,
And so we were just kind of brainstorming in terms of there's thinking through ways that are actually measurable
right,
that we could bring in. So for example, for us, we want to our game is productivity, and we want to make the lives easier for property managers, for example, and we want them to actually spend less time doing their daily work. So
right,
a great metric would be, the number of offline processes that are brought online.
right,
When we first started thinking about that, we were thinking about like reducing the number of activities that property managers are doing off our platform, but
right,
that's off our platform, so we can't measure it. So it's just kind of like talking through the different ways.
right,
And again, I think what we didn't spend a lot of time doing is kind of those games
right,
to get people thinking more. And one of the ones that really resonated is around laying out your beliefs and your confidence in your beliefs, and the impact that those beliefs have,
right,
which both get everything out on the table, all of the different viewpoints,
right.
and then also help to point you in the direction of your potential North Star.
Right. So you mentioned about games. For those of you who are not familiar, so the
Mhm.
Amplitude Playbook mentions about three games: attention game, transaction game, and productivity game, and helps to know this. It was also very helpful for us. It was easy for us to know which game we are in. So what you are saying is, during this exercise, you ask people to brainstorm silently, and then they all paired up,
Mhm.
uh, so that the eight-member group would reduce to four
Mhm.
sources of input, and then you put all the four stories, and then what did you do next? Did you dot
Presented.
present?
Yeah. So each pair then presented to the group, and we talked through them.
Got it.
And we landed really on two potential North Star metrics, but we also didn't want to finalize anything before we do the cross-functional workshop. So we have a couple of ideas that the product team is quite bought in around.
Mhm.
It aligns with our perceptions of the value that we're driving for customers, and then we'll see what customer success and sales and other stakeholders think.
So this was only for the product team. This was not the cross-functional team.
Correct.
I see. Got it. And the third one was daunted by the big picture. Try going from bottom up. Your team is already doing work. There is probably a strategy embedded in that work. I didn't quite get this.
So this again came from John Cutler, but the idea is that all of our squads are active. They are working on product right now.
Right.
The hope is that even if and we do understand our product strategy, but even if you haven't well articulated your strategy, kind of understanding what you've prioritized, what you're working on, can help you to glean insights. And so I actually, when I was doing the brainstorming myself, and coming up with how I was thinking about inputs, how I was thinking about the North Star, I did go back and think through, okay, what is the team currently working on? What are the problems that we're solving? What are the outcomes we're trying to drive? And then I validated, like, does this North Star then capture all of that? Does this jive with the product vision? And triangulating all of that to make sure that everything is, pointed in the same direction.
Got it. So initially at the outset when we were talking, you mentioned about Reforge's article, which said, "Don't let your North Star deceive you." You know what? After the exercise that we did in within our team, ours was cross-functional. It was not just product team, but almost everybody together. It was a bigger round. But the challenges that I face for our product is, our product, first of all, is a suite of products. Just 3 sub-products. So the challenge was to be able to find one North Star metric for these 3 products. And the second challenge is, we have different personas. So the value changes from persona to persona. And we struggled a lot to identify one North Star metric. And that's why when I read Reforge's article, it was solace for me, because what Reforge said is, let me just share some of the important lines. It says, a single North Star metric only captures one dimension of your business. Going back to the sports scorecard analogy, optimizing against at a single North Star metric is like looking exclusively at the score to get insight into how to win the game. You need to see how your team is performing across multiple dimensions of the game. Similarly, because a single North Star metric gives you insight to only one part of your business, you need multiple metrics to get the full picture. My question to you is, does John Cutler agree to having, no matter how complex your business is, it should eventually lead to one metric, or he's okay with multiple metrics, as Reforge mentions, a constellation of metric, as to say?
So it's funny because I need to go back to the Reforge article, which I haven't read in a couple of months. And I had kind of reconciled it in my head that this concept of the input metrics and the North Star metric would kind of align the 2 different frameworks and make them work better together. So I have to revisit Reforge. 2, I can't speak on behalf of John Cutler, but when we did speak with him, there was very much an encouragement to get to that one metric. And yeah, I think it's this idea, like, if you have very distinct product lines, then, or, like whole organizations that are focused on very different areas, then you probably need 2 metrics, but like, don't create additional metrics unless you really need them.
Got it. Yeah. So for me, who was struggling a lot and also was not able to influence and convince the rest of my team, as I said, this came as a solace, because now, as Reforge says, ideally, your North Star metric should be at least 3, which is monetization, retention, and engagement, and then you find your input metrics for each of them. So this gives me a little relief, because I guess we are really struggling with getting one. So hopefully, I would love to ask John as well what he thinks. Is it possible to arrive at one North Star metric for all kinds of businesses, B2B businesses, complex businesses, and stuff like that? That was my biggest question for others in product community. So, but so again, my final answer is, you have still not arrived. You are still in the process of arriving at your North Star metric.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. A couple leading candidates.
Excellent. But you see that you are making progress in the right direction, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. And so let the suspense reveal itself in the days to come. And maybe what I could do is, I could shoot another video and then clip it onto this to make it a complete story. But I just wanted to share thoughts with you on what your experience has been and share my thoughts on what my experience has been. So, as I said, just to repeat it, the two challenges that we have is we have these suite of products. There are three products. Each product is solving, of course, there is some commonality between them, but they are solving different problems. So, the question that the team asked me is, should we not have North Star metric for each of these products instead of the suite? Because I was trying to find the North Star metric for the suite. And the second challenge was we have different personas for each of these products. So should we have North Star metric for individual personas? So the complexity was multiplying.
Yep.
So yeah. So again, I do not have the answers, but it was good to have a conversation with you just to geek out a bit. And,
Appreciate it.
yeah, and then share it with the community. Let's see how it goes.
All right. Thanks so much, Ravi.
Marisa, always a pleasure talking to you. And please, so I've not seen a lot of VPs sharing so much of content. It just makes it so valuable because all that you share is very, very relevant. And please keep doing that.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on.
See you,
Have a great
Marisa.
night.
Bye bye.